I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Tristen Norman.
We are living in a time where we have the most educated consumer ever before. It's really challenging, but also really exciting. So we know that we have to really be intentional about content creation, about visual storytelling. And what we're hoping to do is really helping them feel like brands feel as though they know everything that they need to know, how to connect with consumers in today's day and age.
Tristen Norman is the head of Creative Insights Americas at Getty Images. She operates as one part visual anthropologist and 2 parts data scientist, working across disciplines to understand what motivates visual selection, identify trends within visual language, and using this data to help shape the development of Getty's creative content globally. Leveraging consumer research, social and cultural listening, and pairing it with proprietary data, Tristen hones in on the valuable insights that feed the development of Getty Images' own creative collections. My interview with Tristen Norman is coming right up, but first, as a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful manner. On LinkedIn, you'll have access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior level executives, 10 million are C-level executives. You'll also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. And they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn Ads is also ranked number 1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of Business Insider's Digital Trust Study. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey there, it's Jason Falls. If your company or maybe one of your clients sells to marketers, you look for advertising channels that guarantee business marketers are paying attention, right? Let me introduce you to the Marketing Podcast Network. You're listening to it right now. It's a network of podcasts all about marketing. So 100% of MPN's audience are marketers. Reach them by advertising on the Marketing Podcast Network. Learn more and find our media kit at marketingpodcasts.net.
Tristen Norman, welcome to On Brand.
Thanks, Nick, for having me.
So everybody knows I love a good bio, and our job titles don't always say don't really fully tell our story, but I love your follow-up sentence of being 1 part visual anthropologist and 2 parts data scientist. How did you arrive at this equation for your work, and what does it mean?
Yeah, titles are so funny because they're always a little bit jargony, but really what I wanted to do was articulate truly what I spend all of my time doing. Now, big part of my work is really understanding visual language and identifying patterns in visual language across all forms of mediums, where I'm thinking about, advertising content, very obviously. I'm thinking about the content that we provide, which are visuals and video content, but I'm also thinking about sort of the visuals we're inundated out in the world around us, when it comes to social media and when it comes to film and television, all sorts of storytelling is what I'm thinking about. And the data science component of it, although I am not professionally trained as a data scientist by any means, what I am trying to do is layer in a sort of data-driven understanding of how visuals are moving, so that when we are working with brands, when we are telling them these are the visual changes that are going to matter the most, these are the ways in which you need to kind of show up and meet this moment based on or choices that you're making within your branding. I have all of that. It's all of those insights are underpinned by data. And so we're using constantly both sides, if you will, of my brain to really talk creatively and also very analytically about visual language.
Well, I love that. And, what's interesting about both sides of the brain is that they're usually viewed as very separate. And talk about the role that data plays in visuals moving online.
Sure. I mean, I think that the way that we think about visual language is really about what's going to connect, what's going to resonate. And in resonating and connecting, what's going to kind of drive that action, move that needle when it comes to what we want people, the audiences that we are trying to reach, to do. And so what we are trying to understand is, what are the things that motivate people to kind of engage with certain types of content? What are the types of visuals that resonate with them most? So we have this proprietary research study called Visual GPS, where we're connecting not just our internal data. So as you can imagine, being at Getty Images, we work with some of the biggest brands in the world. And what that gives us is a sense of, here are the visuals that brands are engaging with across different industries, across different regions, across different segments, right? This is the choice that they're making. This is what they're interested in. This is what they're actually engaging with and using. And then but we have to ask, well, how does that connect to or not connect to what the people want, right? So we're regularly also surveying consumers to understand, what is it that is motivating them? What are the things that they care about now? How are they making choices? What are the things that they value? And in turn, we're also looking specifically at what visuals are going to move them, right? And so we're trying to tease out data around that and insights around that, so that we have a clear picture of, here's where visual language is right now, and here's where it needs to be based on these findings.
So you've mentioned working at Getty Images, and connect the dots for folks that might not have a full understanding beyond, I know that Getty Images owns all of the images, all of so many of the great ones out there. Talk about how Getty engages brands and what that aspect of the business looks like.
Sure. I mean, we think of ourselves as visual experts, right? We do know visuals. I don't think we own every image out in the world, but I would say a good portion of them for sure, we have access to. And, we are focused on being a content company and helping brands connect and really compete in this world that is incredibly visual, right? So we have different parts of our business. We're creating content on, our creative side, where we're commercially licensing imagery for brands, for media, for agencies to utilize in their storytelling, their branding. We have our editorial side of our business, where we're looking at, reflecting the current moment from our news, our sports, our entertainment coverage. We also have one of the world's largest privately held archive. So we have a lot of content. If you're looking back, we've had a really, really sad loss this week with Tina Turner, and we have all this archival imagery of her over the years. So that is something that we have access to. We have our research rights and clearance team who are helping clear content if you need. And then we have, any sort of custom work. We work with a lot of brands to kind of create content, whether that's imagery, still imagery, or video. And so we're trying to make sure that brands feel really empowered, feel confident in their content creation, because we know the difference that it makes, right? We know that this is the way that consumers are engaging. In fact, we are living in a time where we have the most educated consumer ever before. It's really challenging, but also really exciting. So we know that we have to really be intentional about content creation, about visual storytelling. And what we're hoping to do is, especially in the work that my team is doing on the Creative Insights team, is really helping them feel like brands feel as though they know everything they need to know about how consumers need to connect, how to connect with consumers in today's day and age.
So you were talking earlier about the visual GPS study and what moves customers, and specifically with that last point, what are some of the key findings in when customers are bombarded with so much today, and so much of that bombardment is visual? What have you learned about? I mean, that's obviously probably an incredibly generic, wide open question, but are there any broad-based rules of thumb when it comes to visual engagement online today?
Ooh, that's a big
Yeah.
question, Nick. It is indeed. I mean, one of the things at the foundation, at the core of visuals, like visuals are sort of the centerpiece of storytelling, right? It is the way that you are illustrating and bringing your stories to life. And that's what branding is about, about resonance. And resonance is about feeling an emotion, about being moved, right? You're always striving as a marketer, as an advertiser to connect with the audience. That's what great brands do. They move you. They say to you, here I am. I see you. I know you. I'm here for you. I have what you need or what you want or what you like, because they're telling a story that evokes and inspires that sense of seeing in you. And that's what people want. That's actually what we found in our visual GPS research, that 90% of Americans believe that empathy matters, that kind of visibility and that recognition of the holistic sense of what it means to be a human today is kind of evoked in the visuals that brands choose, right? So we're thinking about the ways in which brands need to make better choices to connect, to continue to evoke this sense of knowing. And we're living in a time also where the world is so fragmented. It is an interesting time because, like, if you think about the last decade or so, even the last 15, 20 years, the speed, the rate of this like rapid innovation where, where we have social media, you have smartphone technology, you have even this moment of, artificial intelligence, you have all of these things that are evolving. And then you have the cycle of the human response to that evolution. What's happened is such unprecedented change where we've kind of split off into these little factions, these little contained little universes where we want to find ourselves, where we get to be ourselves. We don't have to adhere to one way of being anymore. There's no such thing as mass media anymore, mass marketing anymore. And that's incredibly scary. But I also can say that really presents an opportunity because there's all these sorts of people who are at the center who are desiring to be visualized, to be represented, right? And so I think we're in this kind of interesting moment, where there's a lot of opportunity to represent, all of these multitude of cultures that maybe have not been at the center before.
On Brand, we'll be right back after this. As a business-to-business marketer, your needs are unique. B2B buying cycles are long and your customers face incredibly complex decisions. Isn't it time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you? LinkedIn ads empower marketers with solutions for you and your customers. LinkedIn ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful manner. On LinkedIn, you'll have access to and build relationships with decision makers. Of the 875 million users on the network, 180 million are senior level executives, 10 million are C-level executives. You'll also be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B. And they work. Audiences exposed to brand messages on LinkedIn are 6 times more likely to convert. LinkedIn Ads is also ranked number 1 for security, community, and ad experience as part of Business Insider's Digital Trust Study. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey there, it's Jason Falls. If your company or maybe one of your clients sells to marketers, you look for advertising channels that guarantee business marketers are paying attention, right? Let me introduce you to the Marketing Podcast Network. You're listening to it right now. It's a network of podcasts all about marketing. So 100% of MPN's audience are marketers. Reach them by advertising on the Marketing Podcast Network. Learn more and find our media kit at marketingpodcasts.net.
Now, back to the show.
So you kind of, with that, I would say, almost pitch-perfect answer to an incredibly tangled up, far-reaching question that I asked you. So first of all, well done there.
Don't worry.
But in talking about that, you alluded to this a bit at the end, and talking about bringing in new marginalized voices into creative spaces. I feel like, and this could be another clunky question alert as well, so stand warned. But I feel like so much of expanding that comes quite literally down to what we see and how that drives conversations around diversity, inclusion, and what we're seeing with the aforementioned bombardment. So how do you look at broadening that, at making room for more voices within creative spaces?
Yeah. So first of all, Nick, I think your questions are fabulous questions. My job often entails answering very difficult, complicated, and layered questions. So you're in good company. Don't worry.
Okay.
I think it's about, right now we're in this interesting moment where we're coming out of, I believe and I hope, I think we've emerged from a pandemic, right? A global pandemic that sort of upended all of our lives and everything we knew to be true about certain things, and then all of this change was happening in such a short period of time. I'd never seen anything like that, right? None of us have probably in our lifetimes. What it did was it also in the midst of that, you have, uprisings and protests, and a lot of brands were reckoning with the choices that they were making as leaders in this space in advertising and marketing. And what has happened as things have stabilized is that brands are like, oh, well, what are we supposed to do now? And what I would say is that actually this is not something that has gone away. What has bubbled over that had already been existing in terms of momentum. I talked about this fragmentation. I talked about the speed of innovation. I talked about the ways in which cultures started to sort of move in ways that were unique to them, right? And these subcultures and these splitting off were happening. That was already existing pre-pandemic and just sort of got further entrenched post-pandemic, right? So I think what it's important for brands to recognize is that this is the state of our lives at this moment, and it is not going away. And so it's about asking yourself questions about how do we show up in that? How do we meet this moment? But this has required a lot of brands to move differently. They've had to be nimble. They've had to be responsive. They've had to remain and maintain relevance, all while the ground is shifting beneath their feet very quickly. But what hasn't really changed is, regardless of who is being centered, is there is still a need for storytelling and connection. So it's and in order to deepen that connection, deepen those relationships with the people that they're trying to reach, reach. It's about this knowledge that all of this exists, all of these stories exist that need to be told. And there's so much information out there. There's so much research that we need to do to get to kind of the core human truths of these communities. And we have to make a commitment to do this in this ongoing way. It can't be one and done. It really needs to transform the way that people work overall. And that's how you enable more voices to come to the center and more voices to be reflected out in the work that you're creating.
Wow. I would say, circling right back to what you said, I'm asking hard questions and you're giving good layered answers to all of this, to things that aren't easy, but are absolutely essential in the conversation that we're having and in how that conversation is represented visually. I guess that's really been a point of connection here, is how we have more hardware in our brain dedicated to visual processing than any other activity that we human beings undertake. So what we see, it shapes the world that we move through every day. So, acknowledging that role is quite daunting. So, when you start a conversation with a brand on bringing their visual story to life, what kinds of questions are driving that process?
Sure. I mean, I think it's really important. One of the things I say, I lead a lot of workshops around kind of visual language. And one of the first things I say to a brand is, we got to name our monsters. And we got to name, I'm so serious, Nick. I think it's incredibly important to name our monsters. There's so much that we bring into the room when we do work. You have your own lived experience, right, Nick? I have my own lived experience. I might come from a different part of the world. You might come from a different part of the world. We're all people, right, doing this work. And so we got to name what we are bringing into the room. We got to name what we're here to achieve, and maybe what might be maybe blocking us from achieving that. So for example, right, if we talk about where things are right now, we often, marketers are living in a little bit of rarefied air. We might be living in a world where we're on the coasts, and you're not there are some amazing marketers who live all over all over the country, but maybe you've lived in a city, or a major metropolitan area. You come from a certain background. You live at a certain kind of socioeconomic status. You might have gone to college, and so on and so forth. And that might not necessarily be the lived experience of every single person that you are trying to reach. Or, if you are a person who has who doesn't have a disability, and you're wanting to include someone with a disability, right? Or you are a white person trying to reflect, but you are trying to reach audiences that are, who might be Black or Latinx or Asian. So I think that naming that is so incredibly powerful. Right. And it's like, what is that? What is that I might bring into the room? And then asking yourself, well, what am I trying to achieve here? What's that core truth we're trying to get at? Perhaps the core truth is that Gen Z is really excited about emerging technology and at rates that other generations are not. What does that mean? How can we bring that to life? Or maybe there's another, insight or core truth is that actually baby boomers are super, much more digitally savvy or technologically savvy than we think. And that's actually something we found in our visual GPS research as well. And how do we center those folks in stories? And so it's really about taking a step back, kind of laying it out, airing it out, and trying to have a really honest and intentional conversation about the work. I think often we are moving so fast, and we are bringing a lot of assumptions into the room. And I really think it's important for us to kind of free ourselves from that before we start creating work that lives out in the world, because that's what people see, that people connect with things that feel really thoughtful and intentional, that reflects their lives as they live them. That's what people want to see. So you have to be able to kind of interrogate and poke holes in those things before you put out work into the world.
I love the label. This is meta. I love the I'm going to name this. I love the naming our monsters. So I think that is valuable to begin any number of conversations. So obviously, as noted, this conversation has made me smile several times. As we start to wrap up, Tristen, what is a brand that has made you smile recently?
Oh, goodness. So much pressure, Nick. I've been thinking about this question for a minute now. I think that so many brands make me smile. I spend a lot of my time thinking about what brands are doing and advertising that really moves me as a kind of little bit of a nerd and former marketer. But recently, I have been so excited by Tinder's campaign. It starts with a swipe. They have this campaign focused more on a sort of younger generation, attracting a younger generation to their dating platform, which for those who don't know, Tinder is a dating platform. And what I've loved about it is there are these kind of sort of realistic, fantasy, utopic kind of piece executions where they're thinking about different types of relationships and these like little universes that are kind of near reality, but maybe a slightly post reality, slightly futuristic. And they're so playful and they're so clever and they're so fun. You have these different, you have like a gay couple, you have a younger straight couple, you have folks on again, reflecting all of these different subcultures and their interests within that. And they do it in this really playful and very colorful way. Anyone who knows me is I am obsessed with color. I wish more color would exist out in the world. More color would exist in advertising. I don't know what happened where we thought that we needed to move away from that. But I love their play with color, their play with energy, their clever use of language and their use of ultimately visuals to kind of tell different types of stories that kind of sit within kind of a one core truth is that, you start with a swipe and you end with all the possibilities that you seek in the world. So really love that. And it makes me smile every time I see it on the subway here in New York City.
That is awesome. And I love that a lot of reasoning behind that smile, but I love that there was a visual element with more color. And I couldn't agree more. Tristen, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am on LinkedIn, so definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I am not on the socials professionally. I am an early adopter to the social platforms, and I kind of just gone away with it in recent years. But you can find me and my work and my team's work on creativeinsights.gettyimages.com. Also, you can find more about Visual GPS at visualgps.com, or just visit Getty Images. Everything was there. GettyImages.com. You can find all sorts of resources, all sorts of amazing content. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can always find at onbrandpodcast.com. Tristen Norman, thanks for being on brand with us.
Thank you, Nick, for having me. It was such a pleasure.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.